Welcome back to Dieu Han RV. Thank you for making time to join us today. We know life can be busy, so your presence here means the world to us. This channel has grown because of your love, your comments, and your support. Every click, every watch, every share, it all matters more than we can say. So please get comfortable, take a deep breath, and let's step gently into the next chapter of Dieu Han's journey. By the way, what time is it where you are? And which part of the world are you watching from? Drop us a comment below. We truly read every single one and it means so much to us. We're building a community here, and your voice is part of it. Now, today's episode picks up right where things left off. Some people pass through our lives like shadows, yet leave warmth behind. Dieu Han didn't even know her name, but she couldn't leave her behind. What would you do if a stranger needed you that badly? Would you walk away or stay? Let us know in the comments. If this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and tap the bell. You never know when your kindness could be someone's last hope. The night pressed in, heavy and silent. Dieu Han moved carefully around the room, every step a quiet battle with her own weakness. Her fever hadn't gone, but the girl on the bed still hadn't stirred. Dieu Han placed her hand gently on the girl's wrist, still warm, still burning. With a soft sigh, she stood, deciding to make something warm. Not much. Just rice, water, and care. Even strangers deserve comfort in the dark. She rinsed the rice slowly, hands trembling from the chill still clinging to her body. The kitchen light flickered as the wind howled outside, but Dieu Han's focus remained steady. She thought of the girl's pale lips, the way her chest rose and fell so slowly. Every sound in the quiet house felt louder: water bubbling, spoon clinking. In that small kitchen, Dieu Han's heart stirred with something soft, something aching, the will to care, even while hurting. The porridge simmered gently on the stove, scent filling the air like a memory. Dieu Han leaned against the counter, wiping sweat from her brow. Her knees felt weak, but she refused to rest. Somewhere inside her, she remembered being the one lying helpless, waiting for kindness. The memory pushed her forward. She stirred the pot slowly, letting the warmth rise, hoping the scent might reach the sleeping girl and whisper, "You're safe now." She ladled the porridge into a small bowl, blowing on it gently. It wasn't much, but it held meaning, warmth crafted from effort, not abundance. Carrying it to the bedside, Dieu Han paused. The girl was still unconscious, brow damp with sweat. Her chest rose in shallow breaths. Dieu Han sat down beside her, the bowl resting in her lap. For now, she would wait. Sometimes love is just sitting beside someone, even when they can't see you. Dieu Han reached out and touched the girl's forehead again. Hot, too hot. Her brows furrowed. She knelt beside the bed, eyes filled with quiet concern. There was no time to question who she was, where she came from. All that mattered was this moment, an aching stranger in need of care. Dieu Han pressed her hand gently to the girl's cheek, whispering again, as if her words could wrap around the pain and carry it away. She sat on the floor, back resting against the bed, the bowl cooling slowly in her hands. Her own body trembled from fatigue, but her mind stayed alert. She watched the girl's chest rise again and again, each breath a small relief. The storm outside had calmed, but inside, everything still felt raw. A stranger lay in her home, vulnerable, and somehow, Dieu Han felt less alone than she had in weeks. Somewhere between her pain and the girl's silence, Dieu Han found a quiet purpose. Her hands may have been weak, but her spirit remained. She remembered her father once said, "Healing others is sometimes how we heal ourselves." She didn't understand it then. But now, watching this fragile girl rest in her bed, she finally did. Maybe kindness isn't a sacrifice. Maybe it's survival. Maybe it's hope in human form. The room smelled of warm rice and quiet devotion. Dieu Han leaned forward once more, checking the girl's pulse, eyes searching her face for any signs of waking. Nothing yet. But still, she stayed close. The bowl of porridge now lukewarm, and touched. She didn't mind. The night wasn't over. Healing took time. And for now, this silent watch was her offering of presence, of patience, of care that asked for nothing in return. A creak from the roof broke the silence. Rainwater dripped again outside. Dieu Han opened her eyes, looking once more at the girl beside her. Still unconscious, still burning up, but alive. And somehow, in the stillness of that fragile moment, Dieu Han promised something quietly. As long as she could stand, she would choose care. Even when tired. Even when hurting. Because someone once did the same for her. Because of the unexpected encounter with the sick woman, Dieu Han lost track of time. The sky had already begun to darken when she realized she hadn't picked Tom up yet. Her heart skipped a beat. She rushed to the small home daycare just outside the village. The thought of Tom waiting, and sure where his mother was, tugged painfully at her chest. She blamed herself silently, even though kindness had delayed her. When she arrived, the caregiver stood at the gate, holding Tom's small hand. The little boy looked up, his eyes wide but calm. He didn't cry. He didn't ask questions. He simply smiled when he saw his mother. Dieu Han ran to him and dropped to her knees, hugging him tightly. In that moment, she was reminded again how resilient children could be. And how lucky she was to have him. The caregiver gently smiled and said, Tom was one of the easiest children she'd cared for. He didn't cry when other children cried, and he waited patiently during mealtime. He even helped pick up toys. Dieu Han's eyes welled up. In the middle of chaos and exhaustion, hearing that her son was doing okay gave her strength. Sometimes, being a mother felt like guessing in the dark. This time, she got it right. She apologized for being late, explaining that she had helped someone in need. The caregiver nodded kindly, not judging. She said sometimes kindness makes us forget the clock. And that's not a bad thing. Dieu Han exhaled. Both relieved and still aching inside, life kept pushing her between being a mother and simply being human. Tonight, those two roles had collided and both mattered. Tom tugged on her sleeve gently. He wasn't upset, just tired and a little hungry. Dieu Han lifted him into her arms, holding him close. Her body still ached from the long day. Her fever hadn't fully passed, but none of it mattered now. In his tiny embrace, everything found its place again. She whispered thank you to the caregiver, to the night, and to herself for not giving up. As they walked home under the faint glow of the streetlights, Tom hummed softly, resting his head on her shoulder. Dieu Han looked ahead, wondering how long she could keep going like this. But in that moment, there was only now a quiet walk, a warm child, and a tomorrow waiting to be shaped. She tightened her grip around Tom, letting that warmth carry her the rest of the way. Dieu Han sat on the floor with Tom nestled beside her. She hadn't gone to the kitchen, there wasn't time or strength left. The bowl of porridge she had prepared for the woman was still warm and touched. She picked it up, gave it a gentle stir, and cooled a spoonful for Tom. He opened his mouth like a baby bird, unaware of the night's worries. His small trust gave her reason to breathe again. The spoon clinked softly against the bowl as she fed him. Tom's eyes lit up, pleased with the taste. Dieu Han watched him with a tired tenderness, wondering how such peace could live in such a storm. The porridge, though meant for another, now became something shared. There was no waste in kindness. And if the woman ever woke, Dieu Han would make more. Always more. Tom made soft baby sounds, not yet able to speak, but full of joy. His tiny fingers gripped Dieu Han's wrist as she brought each spoon to his lips. The warmth of the food filled him slowly, and the warmth of her love wrapped around them both. She knew he didn't understand the chaos around them, but maybe that was mercy. He just knew he was fed, held, safe. She wiped the corners of his mouth, still holding the bowl close. Half of her heart stayed in that room with the unconscious woman, the other half right here, feeding her child. Life didn't pause for worry. It demanded presence. And so she gave herself fully to this moment, one spoon at a time, one heartbeat after another, even if the silence from behind the curtain haunted her. The room was dim, lit only by a small bulb in the corner. Dieu Han leaned back briefly, rocking Tom slightly in her arms after each bite. He blinked slowly, full now, and curled up beside her chest. She kissed the top of his head. For a few minutes, they simply stayed like that. Nothing to do but breathe. Outside, the wind whispered, and inside, love held the quietest form. She could feel the fever still in her own body, thick in her back and legs. But the weight of Tom on her lap was worth more than any rest. He was her reason, her center. Behind the door, a stranger fought her own sickness. But here, in this moment, Dieu Han was a mother first. And that meant giving, again and again, even when she had little left to give. She set the bowl aside, nearly empty, and held Tom close as he drifted into sleep. His breathing slowed, soft and rhythmic. She watched him with aching eyes. So small, so unaware of the world's weight. He didn't know that just one room away, a woman lay unconscious. He didn't know his mother had gone days without proper sleep. And yet, his peace made hers possible. Her eyes wandered back to the curtain. Soon, she would have to check again, see if the stranger stirred, if her fever broke. But not yet. For now, the night asked only for silence, for breath, for stillness in the middle of storms, and for a mother to keep her child close, feeding him with love even as her own strength quietly slipped away. Dieu Han leaned her head gently against the wall. She could still feel the heat rising from her own skin, the dull pain behind her eyes. But her hand instinctively rested on Tom's back, steady and protective. The soft sounds of his breathing grounded her. She wasn't sure how long she could keep going like this, but as long as he needed her, she would not stop. Not tonight, not ever. She glanced toward the dimly lit room again. The woman was still lying motionless, her breathing faint but present. Dieu Han whispered a silent promise, "Just hold on, I'm still here." Then she turned back to Tom, brushing his soft hair gently. Maybe tomorrow things would change. Maybe tomorrow someone else would wake up too. But tonight, this was all she could do: love, feed, wait. Tom had eaten well. His tiny belly rose and fell gently as he played with a wooden spoon on the floor. Dieu Han watched him with tired but content eyes. The small bowl was nearly empty now, a few spoonfuls left. She reached for it slowly, her body aching. Just a taste, she told herself. She hadn't eaten all day, and her head was light. The warmth of the bowl brought her a strange comfort. Each spoonful felt like a drop of life slowly returning. It wasn't delicious, just rice, herbs, and water, but to her, it was everything. The weight in her stomach was a reminder that she was still standing, still fighting. Tom giggled beside her, tapping the spoon against the floor. She smiled weakly, brushing crumbs from his lips. At least he was full. At least tonight, he would sleep without hunger. She placed the bowl aside and glanced at the pot on the stove. Steam still curled from the surface. She hadn't forgotten the woman lying in the next room. That pot, half full, was waiting. Dieu Han didn't know when the woman would wake, or what story she would carry. But one thing was clear: if she woke, she wouldn't wake hungry. Not in this house. The weight of the day pressed down on her shoulders. Sickness, worry, responsibility, it never seemed to stop. But in this quiet moment, watching Tom yawn and curl beside her, she felt a flicker of peace. She reached for a blanket and tucked it around him. Tomorrow would bring more questions, more exhaustion. But tonight, there was soup, there was warmth, and there was love. Before turning off the light, Dieu Han stood quietly at the doorway of the guest room. The woman hadn't moved. Her chest rose and fell slowly. Dieu Han whispered softly, as if her voice could travel into dreams. "Rest well. There's a bowl of warm porridge waiting when you wake." Then she turned away, her own body swaying with fatigue, holding on to whatever strength she had left. There are days that pass without chaos, and others that quietly tremble beneath the surface. Dieu Han sat on the edge of the bed, her fingers pressed to her temples. Sleep hadn't offered rest, and her body still ached from yesterday's weight. The house was silent, but her thoughts weren't. Sometimes, even in stillness, life feels heavier than it should. And today, something in her heart whispered peace would not come easily. She glanced toward the guest room where the girl still lay, and moving. Questions stirred within her like wind through dry leaves. Who was she really? Why now? Dieu Han wasn't afraid, but she wasn't at ease either. Tom still slept, unaware of the quiet storm in his mother's heart. She breathed in deeply, clutching her robe tighter. Some mornings don't begin with sunlight, but with unanswered questions. What would you do if a stranger collapsed at your door, and all you had was kindness to give? Dieu Han never planned for this. She was still recovering, still searching for her own balance. And yet, here she was, holding on for someone else. Life is unpredictable, tender in one breath, harsh in the next. Sometimes, it's not the big moments that break us, but the quiet ones that demand everything. If this story touched your heart even a little, please show your support. Like this video, subscribe to our channel, and tap the bell icon so you won't miss what happens next. Dieu Han's journey is far from over, and every click, every comment from you brings us closer. What do you think will happen when that stranger wakes up? Let us know. Your thoughts matter more than you think.